Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the annual meeting for the Traverse Area Historical Society. My name is Stephen Siciliano. I'm the president of the board. I'm very happy to see so many of you here today because you're going to really enjoy three important presentations of award-winning students from the Michigan History Day project. So to begin with, I'd like to introduce our first student. Jack Ducote won national honors by receiving the Senior Division World War II History Prize for his individual exhibit, Rigorous Debate, Diplomatic Failure, and America's Worst Day, The Road to Pearl Harbor. The award was sponsored by the National World War II Museum. He placed 7th in the nation for the Senior Division Individual Exhibit category. So I'd like to welcome Jack up, and we're going to move the camera so that our members on Zoom can also see you as well.
All right. Okay. The microphone's working great. Thank you guys so much. Hello, my name is Jack Ducote. I'm just gonna hold it. Okay. So I'd like to start off by just saying thank you so much because my project really wouldn't have been possible without you guys. So I really appreciate all the support. Let's see. So I have been interested in History Day for 5 years. And this year I decided to do a project on Pearl Harbor. I feel like a lot of people know about Pearl Harbor, but what people don't understand is there are more than one side to it. History Day really likes us to examine alternate perspectives. And so I decided for my project to focus on the Japanese perspective behind Pearl Harbor, which is something I don't think a lot of people get to understand. So I think the best way to start is just to take a look at my board. It's divided into 3 sections. The left side is debate, and so that has sections on anti-Japanese sentiments in America, along with the radicalization of Japan itself. On the right side is all about diplomacy and the impact natural resources had. And then in the middle, what we have is the thesis, some primary sources I've collected, and my timeline. So a lot of the historical context that needs to be known for this project is that after encountering America in the 1850s, Japan rapidly industrialized because they wanted to be a colonial power. Although for a while, Japan was actually on the side of the Allies. That all changed in about 1937 when they invaded mainland China. Due to the brutality of their actions there started to become a rift between America and Japan. There was a lot of anti-Japanese sentiment in America. An interesting thing I learned is that the famous cherry trees of Washington, actually a senator tried to get those cut down because she thought that the goodwill that Japan had given when they planted them was being violated. So although that didn't pass, there was a while where it was their fate was uncertain. Another thing on my board is Horror of War cards. Horror of War cards, which I have a replication right here. The original ones were on my final board. Were basically baseball cards that were put in gum packs in the 30s and 40s. But instead of like baseball players, they had scenes of brutal war in Japan and China. And the point of that was to encourage children not to support war, but also it kind of implicitly made them against the Japanese, which helped to turn the sentiment away from them and impacted the negotiations. Conversely, though, the Japanese people and military were also becoming extremely anti-American. Among the military, there was a big debate because the IGA, or the Imperial Japanese Army, was extremely fanatical and it started to believe in emperor worship and basically wanted to go to war with America right away, while the Imperial Japanese Navy realized that this war would most likely end in their loss. The problem was the Army had sponsored a lot of political assassinations and forced resignation. So anyone who spoke out against the war would have either been killed or court-martialed, basically. So there was no way for a moderate to kind of walk Japan back from the edge. The people themselves had also become extremely nationalistic. One of my favorite political cartoons from the time is right here, which I don't think the Zoom people can see, but it is FDR portrayed as Frankenstein, which was posted in a Japanese magazine. On the other side, the other thing that really led to Pearl Harbor was failed diplomacy. In my opinion, America did not engage with the Japanese as well as they could. After the invasion of China in 1937, America cut off all of their petroleum and petroleum exports, as well as other exports, including aircraft parts and finished metal goods. And they said that they could only get those back when Japan left all of China. What they didn't realize is that the Japanese war in China was actually equivalent to our war in Vietnam, in that it was unwinnable, but they couldn't leave without accomplishing something because the Japanese people never would have supported it. And so what happened is that the Japanese actually tried to give other concessions, but the Americans would not negotiate them without a full evacuation of China, which meant the Japanese were not willing to compromise at all. Interestingly enough, the state secretary at the time not only worked 16-hour days and believed that Japan was going to attack anyway, but also had tuberculosis in the final months of the invasion. So he probably was not thinking his best, and that kind of really impacted the debates. Another really interesting factor is that America did not believe Japan would attack. In fact, this is a really favorite quote of mine. In October 27th of 1941, there was an op-ed in the Chicago Tribune which stated that it is impossible that Japan could attack Pearl Harbor. Obviously, that was proven wrong, but for a while, it seemed that there was no way that Japan could have hurt the U.S. And so the diplomatic situation was really not taken as seriously as I think it should have been. But the most important factor is natural resources, which is showcased right here. In 1939, Japan got 100% of its petroleum from the United States. So any naval or airplane or military action was basically impossible without almost the United States support. So when they cut off Japan's petroleum exports, Japan had two options. They could either go to war or they could roll over and accept what the US was saying. And among the military, the belief was that we should fight now while we have the resources to do so before that becomes impossible. One of the things that is really interesting about Japan is they have almost no natural resources or minerals. So any form of industrialization required expansion. And so when the US tried to stop that, to the Japanese, that was seen as a life or death threat, and that would have led to the end of their empire. And so basically, that meant they decided to fight because they, in their mind, had no other option. On my middle board, I have a couple primary sources from Japan. Most interestingly, these are postcards and posters from China encouraging Japanese settlers to immigrate. This one is called Chinese Countryside After Gun. So a little propaganda there. But this is also a photo of Japanese doctors assisting Chinese civilians in the rape of Nanking. So the Japanese definitely had a different perspective. For those of you who don't know, the Japanese killed 300,000 civilians during the rape of Nanking, but the Japanese people never really got that side. And the last thing I'd like to highlight is some of the primary sources that I used on this board. Besides vintage war medals and flasks from Japan, and this Life magazines, and this is actually a bomber scarf from American bombers. The most interesting research that I did was interviewing World War II veterans. I interviewed two World War II veterans, Andre Chapes and Gil Nadu, who live in San Diego, and they were served in the Pacific Theater. And I really learned a lot from them. And I think that's important because, World War II veterans, there are very few of them. And so the ability to catalog their history is something that I think is really important. This is actually right here, a sketch that Andre Chapes drew, which shows Japanese civilians surrendering, or Japanese soldiers surrendering on Guam. And I think out of the entire project, that really was the most impactful part to me. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take them. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Any questions for Jack? Yes, Larry? I'm going to repeat your question, Larry.
Okay. Wondered whether or not you had looked into the internment of concentration camps, for lack of a better word, of Japanese during World War II, and whether or not there might have been a little bit of this is the way you treated the Chinese, so therefore have a little complete your own medicine.
So the question relates to the Japanese internment of Japanese Americans during the Second World War. And the question is, did Jack have an opportunity to delve into that topic?
So I addressed it actually a little bit on my board. I have a section of kind of the short and long-term consequences of Pearl Harbor. In my opinion, as you were addressing, it wasn't kind of a tit for tat, like, you did this to the Chinese, so we're going to do this to you. It was mainly caused, I actually, on my board, Andre said something to the effect of, we were a little wary of the Japanese because they were always taking pictures of our harbors. That's a quote I have on my board. But in my view, the Japanese internment was caused mainly by the Niihau incident, which, for those of you who don't know, after Pearl Harbor, a Japanese soldier crashed on the Hawaiian island of Niihau. And 2 Japanese immigrants who had been there for like 30 years helped him escape and actually killed his captors. And when the US government heard about that, they kind of thought that every Japanese person would basically be have allegiance to the Japanese army because of that incident. And so that, along with just the fact that a lot of production facilities were on the West Coast, is, in my opinion, what mostly led to the Japanese internment. Yeah.
Sharon? So what were the scarves in your exhibit for?
Yeah. So this right here, and I can hold it up for the Zoom better. Give me a second. Those were bombing scarves worn or, had by American bombers. And what it is it's a map of Japan, including basically areas where they would be bombing in case they crash landed. And so it's waterproof, it's easily foldable, it's super lightweight. And so it was basically an emergency map that could help them whenever they would need that.
Other questions? All right, thank you very much, Jack.
I get this. Here we go.
Our second student presentation will be by Lauren Johnson. She completed a group exhibit with her peer, McKenna Wilcox. They were selected as one of 2 national finalists from the state of Michigan for their group exhibit, The Divide, Dissent Within the Women's Suffrage Movement, that explores the impacts of the debates that divided the National Women's Suffrage Association and the American Women's Suffrage Association. Lauren?
I would like to start off by saying thank you so much for inviting me here today to present my project. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without the support of the Traverse Area Historical Society. Their generous donors have been vital to the success of this project. My peer, McKenna Wilcox, sadly cannot be here today, but she also was a huge help to this project, and I really couldn't have done it without her. Our project centers around the divide of the AERA, the American Equal Rights Association, in the late 1860s. It stems from the 15th Amendment, as shown on our board, and the 15th Amendment was the amendment of the Constitution that allowed African-American men to vote. This led to the divide of the women's suffrage movement because 2 different associations, the AWSA, the American Women's Rights Association, and the NWSA, the National Women's Suffrage Association, both created different ideas based on this amendment. The AWSA, led by Lucy Stone and Frederick Douglass, believed that the rights of African-American men to vote should be allowed first, while a separate amendment, soon to become the 19th Amendment, should allow women to vote. The NWSA, led by Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony, believed differently, that the 15th Amendment should include women's rights and should include women's suffrage. This led to very heated debates among the 2 organizations, and it really showed that they couldn't create diplomacy. They couldn't come together and choose to try, instead of trying to separate and judge this issue separately and try to create solutions on their own, they decided they couldn't decide to come together and really work on this issue. they the only way that the 19th Amendment could be ratified and could be created was when they came together and created the NAWSA, the National American Women's Suffrage Association. They came together and they created this group that eventually worked and marched and created this amendment that let women to vote, which was a huge impact to the way that women were seen in this time. It was truly, truly amazing. And it just shows how they had, when they were thinking separately, they achieved nothing. But once they came together, they finally were able to achieve what they had always dreamed of. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? Yes, Sharon. So the question is, why, from the very beginning, did the two organizations not want to come together for the sake of women's suffrage?
Due to the creation of the 15th Amendment, it was highly controversial between the two groups. They had very different ideals on them, and they generally did not agree on an approach to women's suffrage. They while the AWSA wanted to slowly get women's rights and not do it radically and try to do it calmly, do a state-by-state approach. The NWSA was very radical. They wanted to do it all at once, and they wanted to do it as quickly as possible, by any means necessary.
Yes, Brian.
When did you decide that you wanted to do this project? What was the
Both me and my partner have always been interested in women's suffrage. And when we learned about this project, we immediately knew that this is what we wanted to do it about. And we were looking at kind of the basic things that you think about with women's suffrage, like very prominent leaders and their kind of endeavors and all of their effects on the world. But we really kind of dove into it and tried to get to a topic that would be unique and that would create a very unique perspective on the topic for that year.
Other questions for Lauren? So during your presentation, you talked about the book and the shoe at the bottom of your exhibit. Could you just touch on your reasons for including those?
They were very important visual aids to see not only the technology during this time, but also the way that women were kind of seen during this time. The shoe represents something. It represents kind of the marching that they did, the way that it's worn, and the way that it's ripped, and the way that it looks is very important to see really the project and the time period.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much, Lauren.
Yeah.
So we have another presenter. All right, please come forward.
I am Alex Petrovsky, and unfortunately my partner Joey couldn't be here today, but we both worked very hard on our project about the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Now, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was, I wouldn't say it was the cause of the Civil War, but it was definitely the main contributor. Now, the Kansas-Nebraska Act divided the territory of Nebraska into the Nebraska state and the Kansas state. Now, the act also introduced something known as popular sovereignty. where Kansas had chosen to have the people vote on whether or not to have slavery. Now, the issue with this was that there were many, many people coming in from other states to vote on this matter that were not Kansas citizens. This is bad because the pro-slavery people and the anti-slavery people did not get along very well. There were a lot of very violent fights that broke out into civil war across Kansas. The civil war in Kansas was caused by a large influx of people known as border ruffians. The Civil War was called Bleeding Kansas. Now, these border ruffians came in with much force to try and force towns into voting for slavery. There was also another group of people led by a man named John Brown that tried to get people that would go around town by town knocking on the doors of people who were suspected to be pro-slavery. And if they found that these people were indeed going to be pro-slavery and vote for slavery, John Brown would have his men execute them. Now, John Brown is seen as both a savior and a maniac in his methods. After Bleeding Kansas came the Civil War. Now, we have a photo of John Brown at the bottom here. It was a portrait that it was a portrait of him that displays mainly his facial features, but it also displays the kinds of clothes that he would wear. Now, the way that Bleeding Kansas contributed to the Civil War was the fighting in Kansas started to spread out throughout other states surrounding it. It was sort of like an infection. And as it spread out, the violence got worse and worse until eventually it caused the Civil War. Now, obviously that was not a fun event, but the Kansas-Nebraska Act was introduced in 1854, and it took 7 years until the Civil War ended for the fighting in Kansas to stop. Now, this is something to look at back on history, because it's good to know that when things like this happen, it will be violent, and we need to make sure that if you are trying to pass a law on a state, you need to make sure that people from other places can't vote, because if that does happen, it will become very violent. Now, thankfully, during Bleeding Kansas, there were not too many deaths, but there were hundreds of people injured. However, during the Civil War, there were thousands of deaths. Thank you. Any questions? Yes.
Jack? So the question is, if the Kansas-Nebraska Act had not been enacted, would the Civil War have come?
I believe that the Civil War would have come, yes, but it would have most likely taken decades longer, and it probably would not have been as violent. The Bleeding Kansas was kind of a reactant that sped that up by a very long time. Any other questions?
All right, thank you very much. Do we have any other students in the audience that want to present today? Once again, I want to thank our three students today for their presentations. You can really see that history is alive, both in our schools and in our community, when you have these great young historians presenting as you did. So how about another round of applause for our three students? Okay, we will now move on to the next agenda item for our meeting today, and that is to discuss the state of the society. We will have a presentation on our budget, and then we will move to our bylaws review and then our election of new board members. So since our last annual meeting, the society has been active expanding our activities despite the lagging controls of the pandemic. With partnership with the Traverse Area District Library, we've been able to continue our monthly programs, now both in person and on Zoom. This enables us to reach more attendees and record our presentations and have them available on YouTube through the library website as well as the society website. At our November program, Marty McLeod presented on Old Town, or more correctly, about the old South Side. Marty drew from the research from our new book and provided wonderful history and pictures about this vibrant Traverse City neighborhood. In January, Peg Siciliano presented on the topic Traverse City Transformed from Industry to Recreation. This wide-ranging program weaved striking local art and historical photos with images and paintings from the Detroit Institute of Art. The presentation gave clues as to how and why Traverse City changed so much over the past 150 years. At our February program, Ann Magoon and Ann Swaney presented on the new book, Beyond Books, Stories of the Traverse Area Library History, 1860 to 2020. They told the story of the development of the libraries in the Grand Traverse area, beginning very early on with the Traverse Township Library in the 1869 formation of the Ladies Library Association. They described the move to the Carnegie Library and then finally to this beautiful facility. For the program in March, Jennifer Loop presented on the history of Clench Park, aquarium, animals, and attractions from the early 1930s through the dissolution of the zoo in 2007. Jen described the early beginnings of the space as it was developed by R. Floyd Clinch and Con Foster. It started with the creation of the aquarium and was then followed by the miniature city and then the zoo. Our April program was entitled Voices from the Horn. Our program was presented by Jim Warner, who looked at the early history of the talking machine and featured recordings from the era starting in 1901. These recordings demonstrated historical performances, styles, the artists, the songs, and the culture. We were able to listen to the recordings of three external horn vintage phonographs. Our May program featured Ann Rowe Love and Linda Horwick, who presented on developing genealogical skills to find information focused on local history. Linda provided an extensive handout that includes sources from their research that can be used by others looking at their family histories. The handouts are in the rear of the room today, and so please pick up the two that they provided for us at that time. In addition to our programs, I would like to highlight two projects of particular importance. In support of the archives at Tattle, the Society contributed $10,000 to the completion of the new shelving units. These beautiful shelves have enabled the library to better organize the archives it has had in the past and for which the Society donated our archives back in 2016. The other project is the Astenabi History Project led by Emily Modrow. Through the generosity of several grant funders, including Rotary Charities, Emily's project is providing both physical signage for the Native American trails in the area and important educational information for area schools. The project will be featured at our November program on November 20th at 2 o'clock here in the McGuire Room. Finally, our tours continue this year. In addition to our downtown and cemetery tours, we offered a new tour this year. Marty McLeod offered several tours of the Traverse City's Old Town this year. Looking forward, we have our own Halloween tours later this month, and information on that is on the screen. I'd like to, for our Zoom members, the walking tours are Thursday, October 27th at 4 p.m. and Saturday, October 29th at 2 and at 4. I would like to again then turn the podium over to our board treasurer, Sarah Bowers, who will review our proposed budget for 2023.
Hello. Hi, my name's Sarah. I am pretty new to the board, but I am our treasurer. So on the screen right now, I have a couple different columns going over what our 2022 budget looks like, what we are currently as of the end of August, and what the proposed budget is for the current year. So this is just what we forecast in terms of our income against our expenses. And I am sure all of you are aware that everything is going up. Postage is going up, PO box, insurance, things like that. So I kind of broke it up into what we think will happen the upcoming year. Doesn't mean this is what's going to happen, but what we think will. So currently we are doing pretty well in terms of membership dues and our book sales. Great job, Larry. He sells a lot of books on his tours. But our walking tours are down by quite a bit. We haven't had as many people coming and enjoying those great walking tours. So again, Stephen just mentioned our Halloween tours. So get out there, tell your friends, family, and come out. And that we are continuing to support the library, as Stephen said, with our Peter Till interns that we sponsor 2 every year, as well as $1,000 that we give to constantly work on our exhibits. We did lose last year or in January, a $500 monthly donation. So our income is quite lower this year than it was the previous budget that you guys saw last October. So that is down quite a bit, but again, with the new tours, maybe it'll go up. And our expenses have gone up. Our students that come in and presented, they did really well through the state and the national Michigan History Day. So I budgeted for the increase of more students doing this and doing so well. So that has gone up in our expenses, as well as things like our archives or our storage unit, things like that. So they are going up. And then the last section down here is just our administrative expenses. And I have pretty much increased everything on this list because everything is more expensive this year that we're seeing with the economy. So I didn't just want to, put down what it was last year and then for us to go over. So I just wanted to let everybody aware that we are aware everything is going up. So that being said, we are probably going to run a deficit. But this is just, again, what we're forecasting. We have enough money in the bank to pay for everything. But right now we're expecting that our expenses will go over what we are bringing in income. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. That being said, we're in great standing. We have money in the bank, like it's totally fine, but just how the, economy is going on right now. So.
If
Thank
any, if any of you have questions, just raise your hand. I'll walk over and we'll get them on the Zoom. Thank you. I have one question.
Okay, yep, of course.
Any plans or ways to increase the income to balance the budget?
Yeah, so we are thinking about changing the demographic of our tours and maybe reaching out to businesses or society, maybe to do a group tour to bring more people in, or reaching out towards more like local community partnerships or sponsorships to help offset that as well. We have different things that we're planning throughout the year, just to kind of see what would work with keeping our expenses as low as possible.
So you'd be looking at Rotary grants again, for example?
Perhaps, yep.
and Collaborative partnerships with local businesses?
Yeah, yep,
Those kinds of things?
exactly.
Who
They'd be
does-
happy.
Who does the outreach for that?
Well, we are talking about different ways of sponsoring, getting together with different groups. We were thinking about maybe doing like a podcast. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder if they're going to present on that later, but maybe doing a short podcast about local history, and community partnerships could sponsor that for lower cost for us, but then we could use that in turn to do more outreach. And
Is that your role, designated role, to reach out, or is there someone
mm,
inside the organization who's going to?
well, we
do
have a
that?
couple different people throughout
Do
that
that?
have
Okay.
more connections
Good.
to the, yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else? Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Just to follow up on your question, Tom, just keep in mind that the entire society, we're all volunteers. We have no paid staff. And so when we have projects, it falls to the board to find the support to get that work done. So I think we all kind of share the responsibilities, but as Sarah has said, it's we basically look where we can find it. So we're always looking for additional help from our membership to give us that support. Are there any questions about the state of the society more broadly from either my report or what you have read in the newsletters over the past year? Okay, great. And I would like, Jordan, would you like to come up at this point to pull up so one of our projects this year has been to do a complete revamp of the website. For many people, the website is our front door for people wanting both members and community members trying to find out more information about it. And so thanks to Jordan Anderson, one of our newest board members, he has worked on revamping the website. And so you are all have the advantage of the first to see the launch of the new website. So Jordan, please come forward.
Well, who doesn't love a sneak peek, feeling like you're getting into an exclusive club? Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time here. I will say a short caveat. We were hoping to be able to just say, here it is, go look at it now. But the wheels of technology can sometimes turn a little bit slowly. So we are in the process at this moment of travershistory.org becoming this new site. So hopefully by the time you get home, you'll be able to see this on there. But I wanted to have full transparency at an annual meeting. Anyway, I will still bring up the draft. But what's important to note here is that it's been a while since we've had a change to the site. And most importantly, we wanted to not only have what was already there, but make it a little more easy to access. And in addition, start building some new things that we can have on the site, a little more interactivity and some more archives. I think what's very important is that as an organization, we have written over the years so many wonderful articles and documents and things that have been sent out to members and have been published in various places, but don't have a place to live. So one of the great things that we're building now, and we will continue to build, so please check back often, is that we can house all of these articles and all of these different things. So now you're going to have to excuse me while I very quickly look down and realize that I put a typo in this. So this is very exciting on the fly stuff. So anyway, here's our new site. And I just want to highlight what we're going to be able to see with our, always have the upcoming events right on the page. But one of the things I was talking about in our history section is that we're beginning the process of moving over a lot of articles that have either been in the newsletters in the past throughout the years or different places that we're going to be able to check out. So you can go here and we'll be constantly updating this and revising things like got the brief history of the mercantile operation and also, you know, learn about Uncle Dan Whipple, legend in his own time and a very interesting character that you're definitely going to want to read about. So these are some of the things that we're going to be building out in the coming year. And hopefully when we talk next year, we're going to have a lot more to discuss there. Also, would highly encourage that anybody who doesn't have a chance to make it out to one of our tours, but would like to still go on their own little tour, we offer a virtual walking tour on our website. And you can see all the places here. You start downtown and just make a great loop and you'll end up almost back where you started. But on the site, and you can follow along on your phone, or you can just take it just sitting in front of your computer. But we've got a wonderful, you know, of the past and of current day representation of so many great landmarks that we have just in a very easy walking space around downtown Traverse City. So really encourage you all to check this out and appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Our next step in this process will be to have the election of our annual election of board members. We're fortunate to have some new members join the board for this election. And so what I'm going to now do is pass out ballots for you to vote. This is for the members. So if you're not yet a member, please be welcome to consider joining us. But if you are a member of the Historical Society, I will ask my vice president to hand out a ballot and for anyone who is a member, and this is our election for new board members.
Sharon, do we have extra pens if people need them?
So anyone who is on Zoom and would like to vote, they can, there was proxy voting, which you should have all received a proxy vote. So that can be mailed into the Historical Society's mailbox. And so you have that option. I would say also, if we can work it out, anyone who wants to put their those who would like to vote in the chat, go right ahead and do that. That would be entirely permissible with our technology. Did everyone who's a member receive a ballot? Great.
Anybody need to, use a pen? Want to give them a lot of time to deliberate, Stephen, or can I?
If the voting is done, please, anyone who would like to hand in their ballot, please do so.
Suspense is killing me.
Thank you. Well, based on the ballots collected, I am happy to report that everyone was elected. So much thanks to Jordan Anderson, Sharon Jennings, Marty McLeod, Ryan McCall, Emily Modrell, and Peg Citriliano for their both elections or re-elections. So thank you all. Our next agenda item is to take a look at the bylaw changes that the board is recommending. It's been since 2017 that the bylaws haven't been refreshed, and over that time, the last 5 years, a lot has changed, as you all have experienced. And so as a result of that, we felt that it was time to refresh the bylaws of the society in order to bring them up to what is current practice. And so this was sent out to all of you. If you have email, you would have received it via email. If you did not have email, then it was mailed through US mail. And I have not received any feedback to the contrary to what the board has recommended. So I open it up now for your comments to see, is there anyone who has any concerns about any of the changes that are in the bylaws? Okay, any comments on Zoom? Okay. Well, then, I would like to make a motion to accept the bylaws as amended.
Ask for it.
Thank you. I'll ask for a motion to accept the bylaws as submitted.
I move to accept the bylaws.
Fine. Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? Larry?
But making motions for 5 years, so we're gonna follow his. Robert's rules of order, it's not my idea.
I think we'll move forward. Any other discussion? Then could I have a show of hands by who is in favor? Is there anyone who is opposed? Any abstentions? Well, thank you very much. The new bylaws have been adopted. Are there any other items that anyone in our audience, either members or guests, would like to raise today? Yes.
Oh, let me get the.
being that the National Cherry Festival is supposed to be of a historical basis and connected to the community, and it always struggles with becoming so commercial that it doesn't connect. Have you had any discussions with either the board members or the executive director as to how you might link some of your historical activities into Cherry Festival activities and help both organizations?
We have not, and that's a very good suggestion. We will certainly take it up with representatives of the Cherry Festival to see what we can do. We, in the past, I think some years ago, well before COVID, we did participate in a float, but I would say that connecting with the Cherry Festival as an important historical event is something we will certainly take up. So thank you. Other suggestions? Well, then I would like to thank everyone for attending today. Thanks to Sharon Jennings for refreshments in the rear for those of you who would like to partake. And I wish you all a very good day. Thank you all very much.
Oh, we have one more question. You got it.
Okay. All right. Thank you all very much.